permanency, all things related to permanency for children. And been doing that for about 15 years. And then concurrently have been a student of the principals for 38 years. And so we're always students of the principals, right? But I've been learning about the principals since around 2001 or so, 2000, around that time. Jaime started sharing what he was seeing and had learned about with me. And so I've sort of had this dual track of principal-based practitioner as well as social worker, and then how do those things interface, and what is that really? And so that's kind of what I'm doing. I married with two wonderful boys, 5 and 7. And so if you ask me, like, what are you up to? How are you doing? And it's like, I'm busy, busy coaching soccer, running around, going to piano, to the gym, to you name it, right? So we've hit that stage of now they're in activities. Like we had this pretty nice, okay, they're no longer in diapers, but they're not doing sports, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, now it's all hit. So anyway, so that's what I'm up to. And then Jaime and I, we have a private practice as well, where we teach principals in a variety of contexts, organizations, schools, consulting. We do training for groups who teach principals and groups who don't. Anybody who works with anyone, we would be glad to help share what we see. And that's the beauty of it, is that it is relevant and regardless of the setting. So, but in general, we mostly work with child serving agencies and schools and just groups who work with kids, because that's kind of what we've had most exposure with. But we do stuff with addiction treatment and other stuff as well. From the principal standpoint too, also we've had several years of development and involvement with Pranskin Associates. I worked with them as an adjunct consultant for a while and did an internship with them, and so was really fortunate to have some opportunities with development with some of the pioneers in the understanding, which has been really cool opportunity, and also just at the time, you don't really realize the impact that it's going to have on you, but it has sort of set me on a trajectory to where I feel really blessed and fortunate to help people with this and to point people in this direction. So that's just a little bit about me. Wanted to kind of
go ahead. Yeah, well, I had something I want to show. I can't do it. I can't get up here without doing something for you guys, like to show you. That's pretty cool. So just to kind of get the thing going, I have a coin here, and you're going to have to do your best with the camera view there. Our person at home may not be able to see this as good, but check it out. You see the coin there. Yeah. You know what? That is a Walking Liberty $50. It's very old, and let's see if I can get this going here. All right, you know what this is called?
Walking Liberty.
There's way too much time on my hands. And no social life. But the cool thing about this coin is that if you take it and squeeze it really tight, you squeeze it, it will disappear. Not really. No, it's in the sleeve. Let me do that again, because that was way too fast. You guys didn't know what to look for. So here's what I'm going to put it in the hand like this, and if I snap. Okay, now Helen, you're watching too close. You should blink every once in a while.
Okay.
She's trying to catch me. All right, let's roll the sleeves up a little bit. Now, if you squeeze it just like that, you'll see the coin will disappear. Where'd it go? Hold on. I think I dropped it. Oh, there it is. Behind the knee is the coin. Now, you would think that I'd have a lot of money from being able to do this, but actually I have a hole. There's a hole right in my pocket. I need to get that fixed. You can't see it. It's really small. Perfect timing for the phone there. That's a distract. That was to keep your body, your brain all of a sudden started thinking, and then you didn't see the hole. You know what? Actually, I have a hole. There's a hole. In fact, I'll show you guys in the camera. There's a hole right here too. See the hole in my hand. Tell you what, I'm going to try something here. Come on up. You want to help me with this? Yes. Y'all give her a hand. She was voluntold. Wendy, hold out your hand for me. Now, I'm not gonna put the coin through your hand, okay? Don't worry about that, okay?
Okay.
But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place the coin in your hand and I want you to squeeze it really tight, okay? Can you do
Okay,
that?
yeah.
Okay, squeeze it tight. And I'm gonna try to steal the coin from your hand. Now, you know, pickpockets will like bump you in the street or whatever and try to like steal your wallet or whatever. Okay, it's a lot harder to steal something if you tell them you're gonna do it. So I'm gonna try to steal the coin from your hand. Now, the only way to do that would be to distract you, to get your mind on something else, okay? So I've got something else here. This is an English penny. It's very old, it's not worth anything, very old copper coin. And do not think about this coin or you'll get distracted. Don't think about it. You ever tried to not think about something? Okay. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the coin and I'm just gonna wave it under here and then the coin will change. Hold on. Wave it under here and then the coin will. Okay, she's got a tight grip there. I mean, look at it. Her knuckles are white. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna use our imagination, because magic's all about imagination. So I'm gonna pretend to take the silver coin and place it in my hand. I'm gonna pretend to place the copper coin. And you can see I have the walking liberty. Open up your hand. Ooh, whoa. Check it out. And look, and they don't change color. You can see they're different coins. In fact, if you take this one and you squeeze it too tight, you see that one? It'll jump to the other side. Hi, y'all give her a hand. Thank you. And no, I'm not telling you how I did it. Okay.
So we thought we'd spend just a minute kind of talking about the purpose of the track. Like, what are we doing? What's this about? And kind of how's this going to flow? So orient you a little bit as to your time with us the next couple days. So it is called the Engaging Youth track, and I think built in inherently, it kind of feels like an oxymoron in a way. Like, who actually wants to engage youth, right? Like, but no, it is going to be an interesting metaphor in the way that we're going to go about it this next couple days. A metaphor for how life works in the context of working with kids, working with youth. Okay, so the other tracks are also the same. They're the same thing. They're just talking about how life works and how we share that with people in those other settings as well. So we have two things going on here. So we're going to share about how life works, and then how does it help you to understand that? Okay? So you have the understanding, and then you have the implications for the understanding. You have the intervention. The intervention is explaining and having people realize the truth of how things work. So that's what we're talking about. And then it just happens to be that we're talking about it in the context of working with kids, engaging youth, engaging teens, and that kind of thing. Okay? So today we're going to sort of lay the groundwork and about the understanding, and then we're going to talk about sort of how this plays out from start to finish as you go through. So as we start out, we're going to kind of talk about the importance of connection, what's going on behind the scenes with people, with rapport and connecting with kids, and what gets in the way of it, what allows for it, and that kind of thing. So that's sort of how we're going to spend our time this morning. And then we're going to progress into the afternoon, more about listening and connecting and sort of practical kind of stuff. How does that look in different settings with different kids? And then we'll finish up with, okay, what about sharing? Okay, that's tomorrow. And so how do we communicate this? How do we share what we see, and how does that happen? So I'd like to introduce some of the other the people on the track, or just let you guys introduce yourselves if you're involved this afternoon or tomorrow in the sharing of the track, and just a brief hum a bar real quick on kind of who you are and what you're going to be doing. So this afternoon we've got Risa.
Do you want me to come on?
Or you can come up, or
Talking to you, and you know me
He's got a
already.
camera here that's holds.
Okay. Ooh, trip over. Hi, my name is Risa, and I always leave out my last name because I'm divorced and it's my ex's last name.
She only needs one name.
I only need one. I'm like Madonna. So I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids, a boy who's 13 and a daughter who's 11. And this is understanding has been in my life, my whole life, which has been kind of incredible, but I didn't know it at the time, growing up with this understanding. And about 4 years ago, I kind of realized that everybody needs to know this. Wouldn't the world be an amazing place if everyone understood how they experienced life? So I started delving into it a little bit more and got some training on how to actually, the methods sort of in which to share and how to go about doing that. So I've been in that for the last couple of years and been working with kids in school and mother-daughter groups and things like that. So I'm excited to share with you guys sort of my take on how it's been helpful for me, and especially in the last couple of weeks, because I'm going to be doing a session in the afternoon on deep listening. Kind of awesome if more people were better listeners. So that's me. I look forward to speaking with you later.
Thank you.
Yeah, we should go as Brooke. My name's Brooke, and I'm the president and CEO of the Cypress Initiative, which is a nonprofit organization in Tampa, Florida, based on 3 principles. And our focus really is on youth. So when we were asked to kind of design this track, my thought was, well, I've only been doing this for about 4 years, and there are people working with youth on the ground that I know of that have been doing this way longer. Hence why Jaime and Brock are standing up here. But we really are excited. We're kind of here as a team. So any questions you have for any of us, feel free to pull us aside, have conversations. We really want just to be of help to you. And then this is my team as well. This is Jenna, and I'll let her introduce herself, and Nicole and Helen. But also something really interesting is James is here with us, and James is the principal of an alternative school that we work with in Tampa. So our team goes into his school twice a week this year. Last year it was once a week. We've worked with the staff as well, and I'll let him introduce himself, but he is such an asset to engaging youth. He works in an alternative school. He's a principal, and that means that those kids are really in need of everything that we're talking about this weekend. So he's a resource for you as well. Thank you.
I'm Nicole. I've been working at Cypress for almost 2 years now, and I share the principals in the schools. So I'm also a cosmetologist. It's a little fun note. Yeah, I love what I do. You know, Helen.
I'm Helen, and I've been doing the principal. I learned the principles about 22 years ago, changed my life, and knew immediately I need to share it with others. So I've been doing that. Been with Cypress full time for 4 years. 4 years. I contracted them for probably 19, 18 years of that. Been doing it for like 22 years. I'm excited working with the kids. I've done a little bit of everything. I've went from the prisons to work release to all different things. I've used it in all aspects. Support groups is my biggest one that I love to do. I love to get small groups together and we learn the principles together and unfold. And we just started. I'm so happy to say to John, I'm meeting him. I can't wait to talk to him later. 3 weeks ago, we started a group at the alternative school that first week I had no clue what I was doing with them, didn't know how it's gonna look. And the last 2 weeks, it has just popped. And it let me know that these kids are so grounded, they just need to be pointed at and shared and shown what potential they have within. So I'm excited. So I'll be on tomorrow. So come and hear more about how we engage with these kids.
My name is Jenna, and I've been with Cypress for just over a year now, and I go into the schools with Helen and Nicole. I also have 2 kids, a 7 and 11-year-old, and I just love how this understanding has, helped in the school, but also in my personal life with my children. It's given me more patience, and it's just happy life. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and Nicole is the first principal-based cosmetologist.
We have another one over there now.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Did you want to?
So you do want me to say something?
Yeah.
Great. Brooke did a really nice introduction to me. I'm the principal of Horizons Academy, and the Cypress Initiative has been working with the students on my campus for last year and this year. I'm excited about what they've been able to share and provide for our students who are in distress and struggling to make sense of the world around them and the circumstances that they're coming from. So I was exposed to principles almost 30 years ago and really have sort of incorporated them in the way that I teach and lead. So I'm hoping to share a little bit of that perspective when the opportunity comes. Excited to be here.
And thank you for the introductions. I think that's important because I want you to understand, like, it's, you know, said it earlier in the general session, but it's not like you have experts, right? And then you have novice, and you have we've all been living life since it started, right? Like since our lives began, right? We've been living in this experience of life, and we have the ups and downs, and we know what it's like to be stressed one minute and not the next. We know what it's like to feel hope, right? We know what it's like to feel lost, to feel victimized, and then we also know what it's like to have really crazy things happen and not feel victimized. Like we've had that experience too. So it's this helps make sense of things, and then what we're in the business of doing really is simply, how do we help people see this? So it's not about teaching anything. It's not about, I know something you don't know. It's just helping clarifying little things and pointing in a direction. So we're here this morning, but they are a resource throughout, and you all are a resource as well. So if everyone, I want you to feel welcome to share, to ask questions, and we have however many people in the room. That's how many experts we have about the human experience, right? So just know that we all have valuable input here.
Yes. So what we'd like to do, and this really is going to relate to all three tracks, but we want to do a little intake with you. And since we have kind of a small group, kind of an intimate group, I think we can really do this justice. And we want to take a minute and just hear from you about, well, what kind of questions do you have when it comes to working with youth, or what's something that you would like when you leave here tomorrow, that you would say, I'm really happy that I learned that, or I understand that better. So is there something that you would like to get out of this talk or any of the other two? So, or actually we could start off with just asking what kind of work you guys do who are in the room. So do we have any like social workers or counselors in the room? No? Okay. Healthcare professionals, nurses? Okay.
I'm not a nurse. I'm a dietitian and wellness educator.
Okay.
And
teachers? Okay. Yes. Okay. What else do we have? Just people that just want to learn more? Is that okay? So what kind of questions do you...
Well, why this track?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, why this?
Okay.
So I'm always trying to figure out how I can engage my students at a higher level. I was explaining to someone that I have a child in third grade. He literally has an imprinted frown on his face. It's like he makes his face look like he's mad. Now, I don't know, I didn't look at his files, so I don't know what he's going through, but I'm a music teacher. And so we were doing something, and there was a moment when I saw him start to smile. I was like, I can't believe it. That's what I wanted. But I was trying to figure out, how can I do that, not just for him, but for all the circumstances that they have in front of them, that they could just at least think of another way to deal with it. I have my little things that I say to them. You have control over your life. You can make a choice, decide to be happy or to be mad. I say those things to them, but I thought I wanted to get more of a formula to help me to do it all the time, and then to help them to do that.
Great. Are you writing that down?
Yeah.
Okay. What? That's good. So, just coming up with ways to engage them in a way that they're going to be engaging back, right? That they're going to receive what you're trying to, that connection.
Yes, and also for behavior modification, because I have a lot of behavior issues. And my default is to be punitive. I have to work on eliminating that. So I'm hoping that I can get a new way of thinking.
Okay, cool. We can definitely get there with that, I think. It'll take us a couple of weeks, but we'll get there. You okay to stay a couple of weeks? Okay. What else? What else? Yes.
So I have a passion of working with families and working with families who also have highly sensitive children. So whether they're on the spectrum or intuitive or whatever their gifts are, and working with the whole family dynamic so that it can help to just minimize the labels and minimize what's happening in the home or in their environment. And so I'd like to know more about how to bring more of this into it and to have ways to communicate it more easily where it's not like, I think where I run into trouble is how I verbalize without making somebody feel bad or wrong, you know, like that they're not doing it right and try this way kind of thing. And so it's more in like kind of the communication that would be really helpful to learn more about that. And,
good, that's good. What else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'm in the process of working and creating a program for transitional housing for homeless young adults. They could be teenagers up to age 32. And most of my experience has been working with adults. So I was just wondering what the nuances are in engaging youth over adults. That's
good. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Margaret. I'm from Uganda. I would like to share with you regarding the students from Uganda. How can we come to help students who cannot, for example, they cannot afford pencils, shoes, book? How can we come to help to make a change to them?
So they're in some tough circumstances, and how can we help them to be okay? Good. Anything else? Those are all good. I think if we got by the end of the weekend, if we covered that, it was worth it, right? Yes.
I am working with students. So I teach math to second graders and fourth graders, and I go into the classroom and teach math lessons with the homeroom teacher. And I'm kind of in the 28th year of teaching and feeling tired, and so part of me is hoping to get re-inspired. And also to help them with a lot of perfectionistic thinking. It has to be right, and if it's not, they fall apart. And then just hoping for a little bit of help with me being frustrated when they're not perfect, when they don't follow directions, and they, the lesson doesn't go as well as it could because, they're not following directions, and just kind of being in their own world. And
Good. She's wanting inspiration. She's at the wrong place. Should have been in the other track. No, I'm kidding. Okay.
So there any questions from the virtual track?
Oh, yeah.
You can speak. Unmute yourselves.
Hi, this is it's Annie here. This is absolutely fabulous to see you all right here in my English conservatory. Lovely to see Margaret from Uganda, and I'm really sorry I can't be there. Do you know, I'm have been a school principal, and I work with children and youth in the UK. The most time I get caught up in my thinking is with my 11-year-old grandson. And he's just gone to high school and he's really struggling with older children who are making fun of him. And I do very deep listening with him. I'm pointing back to his truth. But I kind of have to get out of my own way. You know, as a grandma and as a protector, and that's the time when I kind of get lost in my thinking instead of being in the three principles place, in that lovely place of ease.
Great. So you'd like to explore that further?
Thank you.
How to get out of our own way.
Yeah, and to
Yeah.
especially when a child is being mistreated and it feels very personal.
Yeah.
You might be tempted to get stuck and get in your own way more.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Not good that he's being mistreated, but
No.
good. A good question. Very good question. I work. I kind of for the most part, most of my experience has been working with children and adolescents in an acute psych unit, and now I'm working as an administrator in a program with boys who've had a lot of behavioral and social problems, and so I have a lot of stories when it comes to working with youth and stories of. I love fail stories. I love stories where I mess up and learn from it, but also stories that point out how simple, how much we overthink youth, and how simple it can be to that we overthink it. And I think the youth pick up on that and they get annoyed with it that we're overthinking it. And so that's. Beware. We'll be sharing. Stories come to mind, and it's like from y'all's questions. It's like I had a story for each one of those. But we want to stay true to the track of like starting off with just connection today, and I think Brock, you want to share another kind of view of maybe even something about understanding and just the power of understanding. And you hear that term a lot, and you'll hear it a lot over the next day, is how important understanding is. People want to know what to do. They want to know, how can I engage them differently? How can I stay out of my head? How can I connect with them? How can I listen to them? How can I share better? People want to know that. How can I get them to behave better or make better choices? And we are going to beat a dead horse by saying that it's not about what you do, it's about your understanding. Your understanding determines what you do. And so if you're doing wrong, there's something that you don't understand. And I love, Brock's got a great stuff. I mean, I know we shared, but I think this is a perfect story to illustrate how understanding is the real leverage point. Not how much you've read and not how much you know, but understanding is the leverage point.
Yeah, I want to say something first. So let me
Go ahead.
say this. So if you look at the verbiage of the track, it says engaging youth. Okay, it's not getting youth engaged. Okay, so this is not about their level of engagement with you, and that's normally what we want, right? They're not paying attention. They're not listening. They're not blah, 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 right? We're talking about you and your engagement with them, regardless of what they're doing. So they're sitting back in the back row and they're like this, or they're really engaged, or they're cutting up, or they're talking, or what. We're not talking about them right now, okay? We're talking about you. So what are you doing or not doing? What's going on with you that is engagement or is not engagement? Okay, so does that make sense? It's not a small point here, because I think that if people might hear youth engagement, and that's not what we're talking about. Okay, so all of what we're pointing to this time is about you. And now, it obviously is about them, right? You want to be of service to them. You know, you're not in the business you're in unless you're wanting to be of service. So it's like, well, wait, is it about me or is it about them? Well, in order to be truly of service, then you've got to posture yourself and put yourself in a position to be successful. Okay, so there's some factors that are going on with you that either empower your intervention, they empower how effective you are, or they disempower. Okay, so whatever's going on with me, it's either going to help me do my job better, help me be more of service, or it's going to take away. Okay, so that's one thing that I want you to let that kind of sink in, is that we're talking about something that is not always on the surface, but it is. It's kind of like, this is an example. If I'm an Olympic athlete, I'm not gonna, and I'm competing tomorrow, I'm not going to McDonald's for dinner, right? Because it's not that I can't eat McDonald's and I'm against it or whatever, but it's just not going to help me. Ultimately, it's not going to help me. It's going to disempower me, even if it's just a slight degree. Okay, so what we're hoping is that we sort of have that orientation as you're going through. Okay, and then. And I can speak to the camera too. I got people here. So, so anyway, so that's one thing. And then also, the way you go about doing something is directly tied to how you understand it. So if I've got a problem in front of me and something's not working, then I'm going to try to fix it at the level that I understand it. Okay? So I'll give you an example. It's an illustration. That's a true story. Sadly, it's a true story. But my car was overheating, and I was driving home from work, and I didn't notice it at first, but I was not far from the house, and I noticed that the meter was saying it was running hot. I started to smell the radiator and all of that, and so, but I'm like, well, I'm almost home. So I pull in to the driveway, and I do like what everyone would do when your car's overheating, is I pop the hood. Now, so naturally I've got to cool off this engine, right? So I got to cool off the engine. So I'll go and I grab the water hose because I need to cool off the radiator. I knew that it was hot and I didn't want it to overheat, right? With me? Makes sense? So I get the water hose and I put it on the engine, and then immediately it bursts, and all the antifreeze and all this, it shoots up, cracks the radiator, okay, kind of burns my arm a little bit. It didn't get on my face, but it got on me, okay. So now I not only have a hot overheating car, now I have a busted radiator, right? So let me ask you this. How many of you, while I was telling that story, you were following me and then you realized that I went off track? That you realized, you know what, maybe he should not have put the water on there. How many of you knew that you should not put water on a hot radiator? Got some hands here. How many of you are like, what? What's the problem? Right? So what was the problem, though? Ultimately, what was the problem?
Your understanding.
My understanding. It looked like a good idea to me, right? I thought that's what you need to do. It's overheating. I need to cool it off. Now, there are other people that have a level of understanding about cars at a higher level than me. So I'm maybe a level 3, but you might have a mechanic with a level 10, and then they would say, no, you don't need to do that. That's going to make things worse. So their level of understanding is higher than mine. There are some of you that are like, you know, you're with me at the level 3, so you might have done the same thing. So what it did was, my level of understanding, it capped out So only my options were at this level. So I'm walking around like this when it comes to cars. Now I know I've got people that understand cars better, so I yield to them. But in this case, I was like, hey, I've got these options. What do I need to do? Oh, I need to cool it off. Well, what it does is, just so you know, you put cold water on a hot radiator, it expands, and then it does more damage. Okay, and then somebody else said, that's just physics. It's not even cars. That's physics. Like, and I'm like, okay, fine. You know. So my problem was not my behavior. The problem was not that I put water on there. The problem was I didn't know any different. So the problem was my level 3 understanding. It wasn't my behavior. The behavior made complete sense given what I understood.
The problem was that it made sense to do it.
The problem is that it made
That's the
sense.
problem. And that's the case.
That's a good way.
That's the case with everything. The problem with a person with addiction is not that they use drugs all the time. The problem is that it makes sense to them to do it because they think that's all they can do. The problem with a kid who fights all the time is not because they fight, and it's not because their brain reacts into a fight or flight mode. It's the fact that they think in that moment the only way they can feel okay is to lash out because they don't understand. You see, it's the misunderstanding that's driving it. Now, if we were really bold, we'd spend 3 days or 2 in every single one. All we would talk about is understanding. And so we're trying to get that across to you is how important it is to be looking in the direction of understanding, not in the direction of what can I do differently. You will do differently. You will. You can't help it. In fact, you have been doing differently. In your life, we all have had moments, things that we used to struggle with. Think about something you used to struggle with, and now you don't. And you're like, you'll always hear people say things like, you know, I used to worry a lot about what people think. And then I realized, you know what, people aren't really thinking about me, they're thinking about themselves. And then I realized that, what does it matter if they're thinking about me? And then I realized that you have these levels that you realize things. And that's the case for all of us. It's this process of understanding things. I like to use the metaphor of upgrading it's not about getting better apps, it's about upgrading your software. So if he had iOS car understanding 3.0, which by the way is probably out of 100, 3 out of 100. And now he's upgraded to at least a 4.0 because he knows, okay, I know at least not to pour water on the radiator. You know? So that's the underpinning of this whole weekend is the understanding. It's the reason you're doing as well as you're doing. And it's the reason that you're not doing better. So everything above it, you don't understand, and everything below it, you've gotten past. Think about what your behavior in high school. How many of you ever said, man, if I could go back, if I knew what I know now, okay, because you've got more understanding. But in 10 years, you're going to be thinking, what was I thinking back in 2017? You know? Like, we would never worry about what we're wearing or our hair or anything if we knew that in 10 years, we're going to be making fun of ourselves. You know, I thought that was stylish to wear the scarf, you know, what was that? What was I thinking? Look at that loud, look at the black designs. Can you believe that was in? You know, I mean, that's what we'll be saying in 10 years. So it's a perspective. Okay.
Well, and this is an orientation still. It's to the fact of understanding, like that the behaviors you're seeing from youth, that those are a product of their level of understanding, their level of consciousness. Okay. When we say level of consciousness is how real does life look? And where are people? And so when you see a behavior that's undesirable and you say, wow, we need to change that behavior, if you know you can't change behavior without a change in understanding. It's the way it happens. It's the way it works. So we have shifts in understanding all the time. These are really big insights sometimes, like big realizations, like, oh my God, I didn't even realize that, right? And then sometimes it's just like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. and then life looks just a little bit different. There's just a little bit more light coming through. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
When you just said that, something reminded me that when working with kids who are sensitive, they may, you know, they may be feeling what's kind of around them, but they don't have the conscious understanding. But they're reacting to maybe the way their parents are stressed and they're not expressing it, so they're expressing it on behalf of the parent, or, you know, so there's not really always language for that. Mm-hmm. So when you're speaking about this, about the understanding and their level of understanding, on some level, these children have a much higher level of understanding than we're able to give them credit for in our culture right now, because they're all being labeled. But yet, in many ways, they're wiser than any of us. Or, I mean, it's not a competition, but I mean, like, so I guess I'm pondering what you just said in terms of working with these kids who may not have the understanding consciously or communicatively, or I don't know, I guess in a tangible way that can be understood, but they're still expressing it, and it is real because they are feeling the truth of what's happening around them. I don't even know if I'm saying that in a way that it makes sense to me, but yes. I don't know that I'm.
No, I think you're pointing out something, and this is a great question to discuss. Is that there you have the state of mind, you have the reactions and the sensitivity, right? The way that they process information may be different. So they may notice things that nobody else notices, but then the social cues that we all notice, they totally don't notice. And so they don't, oftentimes they're being bullied and don't even know it. They think, and then, but because they're hyper aware that the lighting isn't quite right in the room or whatever, or if you gave them a jacket because they were cold and they freak out. So now the thing is that it is possible in the same way with trauma, okay? It's possible to have understanding that insulates you from, like, you still have the intense experience or the sensitivity, but because you have more understanding, it helps you not to react to it. So the reacting to it is a misunderstanding. You see, so the feelings aren't giving them information about their surroundings. It's almost like a megaphone effect. They're having an exaggerated reaction. Okay, so now, and it's okay if they understand. So what I try to teach kids is that if they understand what their feelings are telling them, then they can be angry and not act on it. But if they don't understand it, then they will act on it because they're going to see that as their only choice. You see? So it's kind of like, I remember one time I didn't know much about caffeine. I didn't understand caffeine very well. I was in college and I decided to go to a coffee shop. I said, so I went, it's like 8 o'clock at night, and I had a shot of espresso. I've never had it. Ooh, it's bitter. Let me get a latte. So I got a latte, poured the espresso in there, ended up being a double. And at 2 a.m, I couldn't even blink my eyes. I was like, I got all my homework done, all my reading, okay? Now, I was having the same physiological chemistry as someone having a panic attack. But because I had understanding that it was the caffeine, I still felt it, but I was able to wait it out, okay? Now, a couple of years later, I decided, I'm doing the caffeine too much. I was drinking like a pot a day. So I decided to stop caffeine. And a couple of days later, I got so depressed. I mean, not suicidal, but just, turn off the lights, put the blinds up, get under the covers, just blah. And I don't get depressed. I have my stuff, okay? But that's not one of them. And then I thought, let me get out my DSM manual, my diagnostic manual, and I looked, and it said, under caffeine withdrawal, depression is a symptom. And guess what? I felt better. I was still depressed, but I understood it. And because I understood it, I was like, oh, okay, I just need to wait it out. So that's what we're talking about. And now there are challenges in terms of, and we'll talk probably more in the second one on listening, in terms of how to help them reflect, because children with autism and spectrum disorders is that they think in very rigid ways. And so, and as soon as you start trying to convince them, you find yourself in a hole you can't get out of. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. And you start arguing with them and you're like, how did I get here? So there are ways to ask questions to draw them out, and to just kind of, sometimes you just have to like hold on and wait for the, not literally, but just kind of wait for the ride to end. But it is possible for them to get some insight into what's happening with them. Instead of trying to protect them from the sensory world, there is a way to help them understand so that they know what's going on, but they learn how to wait it out. Does that answer your question at all, or is that kind of?
It's touching on
Getting
it.
and touching on it. Okay, I'll go with that.
Yeah,
no,
it's good.
It's
I mean,
great
just
question.
to bring it out.
Yes.
But obviously we have 2 days.
No, I think that's great, and I think as these things, it's great for the people who are teaching next, because you guys we're like the guinea pigs, right? So you guys can sit back and be like, okay, I know I want to touch on that, and we want this to build, and we want this to be interactive. This, again, we want this to be a group discussion. Yes, Mark.
So one of the things that I was just thinking of is that, of course, we've all had the experience of having a backseat driver. You know, you're driving the car, the person in his back is yelling and screaming at you. Well, it's kind of the same thing, right? We have, stimulus or things that are occurring to us, and, we can either listen to that backseat driver and drive the car off a cliff, or, no, wait a minute, I'm driving the car, and this is just chatter and noise. So it's really that understanding. I just brought up that metaphor because it kind of made sense.
That's great. It's just like a GPS. The GPS says turn left, and you're like, there's no turn, and you don't just, one time my wife said, she said it's raining outside, and I pulled out I said, no, it's not. Look right here. She looked outside. It's pouring down. No, look, the app says it's not raining. There's no precipitation. So it's about being responsive. Yes.
Okay, so the understanding is going to be with myself, knowing that I don't want to have a disrespectful child in my class, or is it with me understanding that child is disrespectful because of his need or her need for attention, or because of what's going on in their life? Which side I guess I deal with my side first?
The answer is yes. because it is.
Yes.
Because it's all of that. It's all of that. So a minute ago you said something, and I'm going to let you talk in a second. You remember when you said, I'm like, they can hear me all day. You said that you make a choice. You remember when you said that? And that's misguided, because if you think about it and you step back and think about yourself, have you ever chose your mistakes? Did you choose your mistakes? Would you say, when we make a mistake, do we say, golly, I was just really tired, or, I wasn't thinking, what was I thinking? I was caught up, I was being selfish. But at the time, we were picking the best option we had available. Okay? So is it true that yes, but I would never say that because if you say you're choosing it, well then it's putting the pressure on the child. If they make a mistake, then it looks like they're choosing it. And here's the thing, if I think the child is choosing it, then my intervention is going to be to get them to make better choices. So I'm going to try to reward them or bribe them or beg them, or I'm going to get punitive, or I'm going to have fancy charts with stars and smiley faces to try to manipulate them, or I'm going to, if I see it that way. Okay. Now the other side of the coin. Now the grain of truth is, in life, you're held accountable. There are consequences. There are natural things that happen. So it's not that you don't have that. It's just that your intervention is not emphasizing on making better choices. Now the other side of that coin that you'll hear sometimes is that they don't have a choice, and that because they've been traumatized, that it's all about the trauma and it just requires healing. And now, the problem with that is that you end up with a lot of excuse making and a lot of victimization. So how do we provide firm limits without making excuses and making them victims? because where I work, the staff tend to say, well, I know he's been through a lot, but he can't act that way on the street. He'll get beat up or he'll go to jail. And then I have the therapist saying, oh, well, he's got trauma and it's all about trauma-informed care and it's trauma-related. And both sides get contaminated in their own understanding. See, what we're saying is, yes, they need a lot of compassion and understanding, but they also need accountability. Wisdom has both. And when we say wisdom, we're talking about God's thoughts, as Ryan said earlier. It's that the thinking that comes to mind when our head's clear and when we feel connection with the person, with the kid. So you're right. If I'm sitting here and I think, oh, well, he's being disrespectful because he needs attention, well, then I might be tempted to try to give him attention. But what if I said, wait, he's being disrespectful because, oh, wait, he thinks he needs attention to feel okay. He doesn't really need attention. There are times when he's not getting attention and he's fine. So how can I help him understand whatever he misunderstands? To me, that's the first question we need to ask ourselves. If a kid's acting out, what is it that he doesn't understand about the principles or about experience or about life? And that's what we ask ourselves. What do I not understand? Do I think that it's my job to make sure the class runs smoothly? Do I think that if the class is disrupted, it's a reflection on my ability to be a good teacher, or if I don't help them, if they don't get help, that's a reflection on me as a social worker? Or if the hair doesn't look good when I cut it, okay, that's about my understanding. And your understanding empowers your ability to teach other people.
So it's flipping the way that we've thought about how life works. It's kind of flipping it on its head, right? It's turning it inside out. And the implications for that are so far reaching. I mean, that's why we have all these tracks. That's why we couldn't even cover them all in the tracks. Doesn't matter how long we go, because it's anytime you feel tense or insecure or stressed, it's your experience, the feeling that's happening within you. And people could see that you're stressed and they could have all kinds of ideas about why you're stressed, and we could come up with a bunch of sophisticated excuses as to why you're stressed. And you could come up with all these reasons, but then it's like, but they're anomalies. He said there's so many anomalies to, well, wait, but what about in this situation? The circumstances were the same and you felt fine. Or a few minutes ago, you were mad about not having, about whatever, and you were acting out, and now nothing's changed and we're laughing. What explains that? And these are literal conversations you have with kids or anybody, is you're showing that without any effort on your own, without any intervention from anybody, something changed within you. And notice it for yourself. Like, today I felt one way, and this was on my mind, and I felt this way, and then the next minute I felt differently. What's that about? And it also, from a connection and rapport standpoint, from a engaging youth standpoint, which is the topic, right? But we said this is so foundational, it's just hard not to spend a lot of time on it, right? But there is this behind the scenes factor that is determining how well you're connecting with kids or not. There's a missing link that we've not seen before. Now, we've sort of seen it, and people have ideas about it, but it's really, what is your headspace like? What's going on with you when you're with the person in front of you? What is your weather in your head? Okay? So what we're suggesting is that the weather in your head is the factor of how well you engage. Now, we're not talking about how well they engage back, okay? I said, we're not worried about that.
That's
right
their
now.
weather.
That's their weather. We're talking about your weather is what determines how well you're connecting with kids. Now, I'm not talking about even your level of understanding. You may not know, because what we're doing is we're bringing awareness to the fact of weather. But even before this, you still had weather in your head, and you were still connecting with kids in some moments, and there were some that aren't. There are people who've never heard of the 3 principles, and they're absolutely doing magic with kids. Mm-hmm. So it's not about, oh, we got this club of people that understand this, and it's just great. And there are people that they see it, and they live it. They don't know what it's called, but they know that when they're stressed out, they're not going to do as good with kids, right? Do as well. They know that when I'm really anxious, or like this is not a good time to have a conversation about money with my spouse. Like this is a bad time, right? Their wisdom is saying, you know what? There is this factor of how you are doing that is going to determine how well this is going to go. So what is that about? So what we're saying is that, pointing to, is that we're walking around, and when we're just there, when you're just there, okay, like your natural state of your hands, just like this, just cupped. Okay, I'm not stretching it out. I'm not saying we walk around like this. I'm not saying we walk around like this. Now we do this, and we grit our teeth, and then when we face this adversity, we do it even more. Or then we say, you know what? No, we're going to help these kids, and we do this. Okay, if you put soapy water or soap in your really wet soap in your hand, and you're doing this, it's going to slide out. And if you squeeze it, it's going to slide out. So, but if you're just yourself, you're just there. It's like boom. You can put wet soap in my hand, and I can hold it all day. Okay, just hold it all day.
He has
and
before,
and I'm trying. I got proof. So when you're just there with people, your headspace, your weather in your head it just clears. Or when it's clear, you've got more reception for connection. And then, now they have their reception for connection, but you can't connect with them unless you're there to connect. So your side has to be open and receptive too. But how many times do we try to engage youth to get them to do what we want them to do? To try to manipulate them, to try to make our lives easier, we're trying to help them. And that's something, oh my gosh, as a social worker, it's like, it's so easy to get caught up in, well, this is a noble cause, and I know more about how to help you than you do, so I'm going to try to help you. But one of the fundamental values in social work is self-determination. And I always was like, but they don't know, like what? Well, how do we let them be themselves? How do we let them guide and support versus doing everything for them and all of that? Well, it plays into children a lot, because a lot of times we think we know. And this is a very humbling thing that happens. Because one, now we can't blame them for our feelings anymore. Not within our own integrity, we can't. We have to call, and we keep each other accountable. Like, I'm gonna have to call BS on that, It was not that child that's making you feel that way, or that parent. Some people say, well, it's not the kids, it's the parents. But then you have other people say to a kid, he can't make you mad. But then they go and complain about how stressful their job is. It's like, well, wait, I thought things can't make you mad, right? So there's like this, do we see it across the board? So we're just there. Boom, like this. Just that exhale that Dave talked about, like that is the space for connection. That's where we have to be there in order for anything to ever happen. For the magic to happen, it's got to start with you. It's got to start with you and seeing all the expectations, all the memories, all the ideas. Oh, I've dealt with this. I do really well with 15-year-old African-American ODD kids, right? Or I do really well with kids with this, or parents who deal with this. And we have all these things that are creating more weather that are getting in the way. And it's like, you know what? You have no idea what's going on in that child's head. There's no way, even if they tell you, there's still no way that you can really know. So having the humility that there's no idea, I have no idea. Even if I've dealt with this kid every day, this is the second year this kid's in my class, or I've been working with this family and I know the family. You don't. We don't. And when you're more like this, then you're putting yourself in a position for the magic to happen. So talk about connection in that way.
Well, well, just like, you know, how many of you have you ever some?
I just wanted to,
Turn it to yourself.
Selfie. Oh, look at there.
Selfie.
I just want to say that with this, we can still have all sorts of weather. So our hands can be flexing and squeezing and doing all sorts of things. So I can be in a twist and deal patiently and calmly with my children. Often when I'm in a twist, I don't have the wherewithal to know that doesn't mean I can't be patient and calm and deal with my child. Often I get lost and confused and I get caught up in my twist. So what he's saying is not to change your weather, not to try and get all zenned out. Go into a classroom full of kids that are tearing the house down and be all zen and peaceful. You can have whatever crazy is going on in your head. They got crazy going on in their heads. The moment you know that your crazy is causing your experience and their crazy is causing their experience, now you're in an open state. Now you're in an open place. So I just wanted to make that.
It's a good distinction.
Yeah, and
Thank you for that.
Basically, what he was saying was that that when you understand, that it's just weather, and that it will pass, and that it doesn't mean anything, that allows you to not take that weather seriously. It's the taking it seriously that causes problems. Yes.
Well, I think the other thing is there's so many times we work with kids all day long that you're not just like this.
Mm-hmm.
But with the understanding, you realize when you walk away from the conversation or something escalated or you didn't get through to the child, at some point you realize for yourself, I was like this, or I was like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we call it the 100% accountability model, because you walk away and go, I didn't connect.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder that didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much to get through for that child to even hear me.
Mm-hmm.
I was projecting so much.
And it was on you.
Yes.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
has nothing to do with the person
Right.
in front of me.
Yes.
But I think that brings up a really good point. There's a level of forgiveness for yourself and your humanity, and that's important too, right? Because otherwise you're going to start to do more thinking, judging yourself, getting really down. And I think what's beautiful about looking in this direction is that, you know, it does kind of flow off of you. Yes, you're human, you have the weather pass through you, but, you know, it allows you to evolve to a greater understanding. But the other direction, if you didn't, you know, see that as just being human, you wouldn't be able to grow and evolve. And, you know, I just thought that was really cool.
Helen?
And one thing I was gonna say, because we keep saying the understanding, and I know you all are new, some people are very new to what the understanding is, even though you talked about it. I think the biggest thing for me when I learned how to forgive, because I was a victim, I was a 38-year victim. Anybody said something to me, I was hurt because I had been victimized. So whenever it was a kid or anybody else, I would take it personally. Mm-hmm. And what the understanding that I'm talking about is when I understood that my thoughts are bring me my feelings, not what's happening out here. That was the understanding that changed. So once I understood that, I could have a kid acting up. And now, instead of getting angry with that kid, I have compassion. Because I know for 38 years, if I walked around with abuse and all this stuff in my background and how I was treated and all this other stuff, I had all this stuff going on. So it could be something positive coming at me, but I still saw it that way. So understanding that I experienced that, I now understand that kids, other people that are going through something, that they're doing that as well. So that's been a piece for me. That was an understanding that I needed. Because now I see kids, and we go into the alternative school, and it's one little girl that I can't wait to see her next week, because I know she got something going on, and I want to just be able to let her understand what's happening with her. It's her stuff that's happening, so I don't take it personal. And then you can see that kid differently, and then that connection, I think, comes when you accept them right where they are, with their stuff and all. And it gives you a relief, because now you're not taking on their stuff. You know, you're not, that makes sense?
Yes, thank you.
I have a short story about that. The other day, my son he's 13 and was behaving like a 3-year-old. And I totally took that on, and I could not handle him. And I was so frustrated, and my 11-year-old daughter grabbed my arms and said, "Don't let his behavior affect what you're," and I was like, "Oh, thank God. I have my own little counselor at home." So it's
Yeah. Well,
you get caught in it.
You know, I was thinking when you were saying, Brock, about when we don't really know them, you know, we think we do. And have you ever in a relationship with your spouse or a friend or a sibling or something, and they say, "I know how you are. I know you. I know." Does that not get, because you want to say, well, that's how I'm not that way this time. This is different.
Yeah.
You know, you never, because if anytime someone presumes that they know you, it doesn't feel right. And so that gets in the way of our connection. Now, I want to use a little metaphor that I like to use for this. And I want to just emphasize again that there's a lot of, when people hear youth or they hear teens, they automatically tend to have a lot of thinking about that, about their hormones, about that they're trying to discover who they are, about that they're going to challenge the system. In fact, most people that complain about teens, they're really complaining about their own kid at home. Have you noticed that? That's when they start to complain about it. And having a lot of thinking on your mind about kids, like thinking that they're a special group, I think that gets in our way sometimes. They're not nearly as rebellious and as we expect it. So we kind of go in with our shield up and we're ready for them. And if you just see them as human beings, I had interns at the hospital, and some of them would work with children and some of them would work with adults. And they'd say, "Well, I can't work with adults. I don't see how you." I said, "Well, adults are just grown-up children." And it's, "Well, I can't work with kids." Well, they're just adults that haven't grown up yet. I mean, we're all people. And so when you connect with them on that level, and you're not, here's the other trap, it's not just thinking. Obviously, too much thinking is always the biggest trap, but going into the interaction, trying to get them to like you, trying to be cool, so they can smell that a mile away, okay? Trying to be hip. Even the fact that we use the word hip tells you that. And what I found is that and I've discovered this the past few years, is that it's not about getting them to like me. It's about me getting to like them. And so people like people who like them. And if you like them and you are interested in them, and you ask them about Yu-Gi-Oh cards and how do you play this? I don't understand it. And you're not doing it as a technique. You're doing it because you genuinely want to connect. You have the intent to connect. You know, in the next workshop when we talk about listening, it's going to be about that intent to be influenced. So you get this intent to connect, and it's no sweat. Now, and connection happens instantly. And what I love, I'm sorry.
I'm John.
John, yes, John. Great, right? It's moment to moment. Okay? So at 10:10, I've got rapport with my wife. At 10:12, I've lost it. I got it back at 10:14. So here's my metaphor for you. Think about cell phones, okay? Smartphones. Now, I used to use the bars. Remember the bars? Now it's like LTE and 3G and all that. Well, we're all walking around with a signal. And what happens when you're on the phone and you go into a parking deck or you hit a bad area, you're on the phone with your spouse and they're saying something or you're saying something, it's like, what do you do? hey, got a bad, you hang up and you wait for the signal to improve. You don't get mad, you don't get angry that the person said, you wait for the signal to improve. The signal, your signal and their signal, the default setting is that there's a connection. Something has to get in the way of that connection in order to lose a signal. And it doesn't matter how many apps you have and how great a phone you have, if it's an iPhone X or whatever the new one is. If there's no service, it's like being in airplane mode, you know? You're not going to get a connection. Don't care how, you could have the biggest hard drive on your phone. How much you know about the kid and how many things you've read in the chart. It's not gonna, it has nothing to do with your connection. So just being aware of your signal strength, that will help you. When you know you've lost your signal, then you can take ownership, it's like, hey, it's 100% accountability. In fact, my wife and I would, one time, I was sending her a text. I mean, I called her one morning and her phone picked up right away. I left before she got up and it was picking up right away, and I left her a message, and then later I was in a training and I would text her, and my texts were not going through. We have iMessages and they were green and she wasn't responding. I'm like, what's going on? And I kept calling. Finally, I sent her an email and just said, hey, what's going on with your phone? And she was like, it must be your phone. You know, your phone is messed up. And I said, no. I said, I'm able to call other people, but I'm not able to call you. She said, well, I'm getting calls from other people. And so we kind of got into an argument about whose problem was. She had accidentally blocked me on her phone. I was blocked.
Accidentally.
Oh, I blocked you. My bad. But anyway, we tend to do that sometimes. We'll have a block with certain people or certain types of people.
Okay. So my block was the fact, because I've even said this, that I cannot take disrespectful children.
Yeah.
So that's my block, and my block was that people have died for you to be able to come to school to get an education. And you're sitting up here playing and being disrespectful and stuff. So all those are my blocks that makes me respond like this. Then is that?
So you're walking in with 1 or 2 bars max when you've got those blocks, right? And regardless of where they are, they may have no signal either. You're certainly not going to connect if you don't have a signal. So we can walk around with 5 bars and Brooke's stressed out, she's upset, she's anxious, whatever. She has no signal, okay? That's not on me, but I'm there. I've got my signal.
And you're able to be present and not personal.
And it's not personal. Now, but if I think that her lack of signal is because she's this or that, because she's disrespectful, because she's a bad kid, but a lot of parents say, no, I said, man, that kid seems like she's just really struggling. She ain't struggling, she's bad, right? So what you see on your eyeballs affects your signal too. So I see that she has no signal. Well, you know what? I wish she'd quit being such a baby, blah, blah, blah. So I start thinking, my 5 bars went to 4, to 3, to 2, to 1. And then because I'm irritated that she's not engaging back. So this goes back to the whole thing about engaging. Am I engaging? Are they engaging? Or whatever. Those are 2 separate things. But if I see that my kid in front of me has no bars, that's not, what does that have to do with me? Right? When the phone cuts out, first thing you do is you check your signal. Oh, well, I lost my signal. Or, I've got my bars, it must be on there. Okay, it's fine. Like, it's not a big deal. It's not personal. It's not a big deal. But you see that the problem is the signal strength. It's not anything else. It's not who they are. It's not that. It's what meaning do you give to the fact that this is all going on?
Say that. Say that again.
So what meaning do you give to your connection or lack of connection? What do you attribute to why things are going well and why it's not? Why are we 1 minute we're laughing and we have rapport and this is connection, and the next minute we have no signal, and what in the world is going on? What happened? And then there's so many, then what do? We try to fill in the blanks, right? And then we listen until we think we understand, right? And then we do all this stuff to try to fix the situation. And signals, what they do is they come back up when you leave them alone. They come back up. So go ahead.
So I had an experience. We were going into a women's prison, and they didn't have a choice whether to come to the class or not, right? So they were, captive audience, so to speak. So the thing is, I just remember enjoying going in and just seeing them as human beings, and there would be some people who would really connect and they would be engaged, and then there was always like a couple people on the edge of the class who were just like nodding out, whatever. And I just remember noticing it, but not getting too caught up in it and just going through the class. And it would go for like a 12-week period, and then people would write down what they got out of the class. And what really shocked me was I remember one or two people who I thought were totally not engaged and really weren't even talking in the class, but wrote down some very profound things that they got. So, as long as we were keeping a good attitude and enjoying what we were doing as the facilitators of the class, you don't know what's going to happen. And you can't always gauge by what people's behaviors are. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is not only do we not know what's going on with other folks, but how many times do we really know what's going on in ourselves?
Right.
I mean, do we really know ourselves? I mean, the story that we tell, I was born here, I did this, and our behaviors, I mean, is that really who we are?
Right.
I mean, so even on that level, when you get right down to it, it's really more being in the moment and, having those bars at 5 bars and then just showing up and seeing what happens in life. So,
that's beautiful right there. That's cool.
Quick story that comes to my mind. I was doing a group with the adults one time, and I said something that I thought was really profound. I was like, wow, that was good. Like I'm good. And then all of a sudden, this lady gets up and kind of storms out, kind of in a rush. And my first thought was, wow, did I offend her? And my second thought was, you know what? Some people just don't want help. You can't help them all, right? You can't help them all. And then afterwards, she came up to me and said, hey, I was loving it. So sorry I had to run out, but I just remembered I had to do something before 10 o'clock. You're right. I totally was. I mean, you want to be suspicious of yourself all the time. As soon as you're convinced, that you got to be careful. Okay. We'll talk more about that later, but that's exactly, we half the time we have no clue what's going on with ourselves. That's great.
Hey, let me share real quick the PRA stuff. I like to, as we wrap up, because we're getting toward the end. So I work in child welfare and deal with children who've been through a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse and neglect and loss. They've been into a number of foster homes, upwards of 30 or more sometimes, just unbelievable situations that we see. And then also supporting adoptive families who are taking these children in and trying to support them. And it can be really tricky, a lot of complexity and that kind of thing. So one of the things that I feel I'm super excited about is introducing this understanding into that world of, what it looks very complex, but it may not be like we think it is. Maybe there's something that's fundamentally true here that can help. And there's all kinds of research that has been very helpful to the field about the effects of trauma on child development, the effects of trauma on dynamics in families and loss and all of this stuff. And there's this study, the ACE study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences and health outcomes and all of this. So there's a lot of data and research that supports that children who've been through a lot have poor outcomes as a whole. But then there are also kids who have really high ACE scores who are doing fine. And then you have others that have had a lot of adversity, and they're thriving. So there were still anomalies in the research, and that was what sparked Dr. Bruce Perry. He's done a lot of research on trauma, but he was curious about, well, what about the anomalies? Like, what is that about? And he did research on the kids that were thriving. He did a lot of stuff with the Oklahoma City bombings and a lot of these big time trauma stuff. He worked with those kids and with the in Waco, the incident that happened, he worked with those children and families and did a lot of research. And he was just fascinated by the fact that kids could still do well even though their circumstances seem similar, right? And one of the things that he noticed is they defined this, it's a name for it, it's called a positive relational experience, PRE, positive relational experience. And it's a discrete moment in time where I have a connection with another human being, where I've got my 5 bars and they've got their 5 bars, or it doesn't really matter if they have their 5, but when I have a connection with somebody, and that positive relational experience is like, it's like a little ding, it's like a little mark, check mark. Throughout the day, the kids who have more positive relational experiences, more connection with people, there was a stronger relationship between that and how they're doing versus the trauma. Okay? Now, and I get choked up thinking about it. It's just so powerful, but it's basically the key. What they're discovering is the key behind resilience from a research perspective, and from people they're not familiar with the principles, but they know that there's something behind resilience, but we don't know what it is. But we know that kids who have a lot of good interactions with other human beings, that can be kids at school, that can be their bus driver, that can be the maintenance person, their teacher, okay? Doesn't matter who it is. It could be a trusted adult that's a parent. It could be a peer, okay? But that feeling of connectedness does something for people, and it helps them get out of their world and into the present moment, okay? So what it does, too, is over time, it mitigates trauma. And for the longest time, the research said if they have one trusted adult, then they can recover from trauma. And then they're realizing, well, it's really a matter of their connections with other people. And it could be one person or a lot of people or whatever. And of course, now we're over here on this side saying it's simpler than that, right? But we're not going to minimize the fact that the implications for this, because it's still pointing to your connection is the intervention, okay? It's not what do I do after, like, oh, well, now there is obviously the education piece of sharing how all this works and all of that. That's helpful. But the connection is what's doing the magic. It's them getting out of their world, getting into this moment, into that space. That does it for people. That's where the magic happens. So we historically in therapy would say, well, we got to get rapport so that we can do this, so that we can do this. And it was like first step in this rung of things, right? And then what happens if things start to go south? We got to get rapport again. Okay, that's the core, right? We got to get rapport again. Got to get rapport. Well, rapport is what's doing it.
It is.
Are you guys with me?
ODD. Yeah. Rapport is the treatment for ODD. Rapport is the treatment. The reason they have ODD is because they're
ODD is.
Oh, oppositional defiant disorder. I'm sorry. The kids that are just, they just attitudes. They're manipulative. They don't like the word no. They have trouble with not getting their way. All 2-year-olds are ODD, by the way. And the question is whether or not they learn not to be. Okay, but being in rapport with an adult that's their therapy. That's their treatment.
Okay. So I'm just thinking, so I see my students once a week. So that rapport building has to reoccur each time I see them. I have to go out my way to connect.
I love the question. We say building rapport. So rapport is actually something that it just happens. You build a relationship over time where you have a dynamic and all of that, but you can have rapport with the person at the gas station. You have a connection with someone. So yes, rapport happens every time you're with someone. It either happens or doesn't, right? So yes, every time you see them once a week, that's your opportunity to reset and to be intentional about connecting.
Create more rapport visits. So I got to see them in the hallway, I see them in the cafeteria, so that when they come back to me that next week, I've kind of added to that.
It doesn't accumulate. It doesn't accumulate. In other words, there is a level, there's a relationship that does accumulate. So like my wife, for example, like we've been together a long time, and so we have a relationship. Now, we don't always have rapport. We don't always have a connection. That's moment to moment. Okay? So every time you go into an interaction, if you can, when you're present and you're in a nice feeling and you're clear and you're meeting them where they are, you'll then that connection it feeds on itself. Now, I had a lady one time who I had really good rapport with, and she left me this long voicemail, like 3-minute voicemail, and so I was talking to her on the phone, and I said, hey, I'm just now calling you back. I know you called me this morning. I just got through listening to your message. I was joking with her. She laughed, and it was, we had a nice little connection. Well, then the next day she did it again. And I thought, I got rapport with this lady. Like I just assumed I had it. And so I said, yeah, I made another offhand remark about it. And she said, well, if I could get somebody on the phone, I wouldn't have to leave all the information. And she kind of went off on me. Yeah. And it woke me up to the fact that rapport is separate from the relationship. And here's one more quick point to close out, is that our biggest mistakes, or I say there's 2 mistakes we make in this arena. One is that we don't appreciate it when we have it. And 2 is that we assume we have it and proceed anyway. Okay? So when you don't have it and you try to help them, it's like, oh, I know you're getting a root canal. I've decided I'm not going to use anesthesia today. You'd be like, wait a minute, okay? So it's appreciating that connection when it's there, and then noticing it when it's not, and being patient and waiting for the signal to improve. And then if you have that as your foundation, then you'll have the wisdom to know when it's time to make a joke, or it's time to okay, guys, we got to get it together here. You see what I mean? Now, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
And to say, yes, little moments in the hallway. I know we're at line at lunch, and I got a kid here, and you just kind of bump them, and they kind of laugh and connect. And it's just those little things that they may not know if they're going home tonight. They may not know if they're going to court tomorrow, if they're going to get to go back to their parents, if they're going into foster care. They don't know if they're going to get shot on the way home. They don't know, right? But in that moment, boom, rapport. Like that, it's so simple and ordinary. We're like fish in water. We don't see it. It's just, we appreciate those moments, and it does it for you too. So now you quit seeing the bad kid, right? You quit seeing the troubled, the ODD kid, the this, the that, they got issues, right? All of that is starting to flesh out too. So
thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys later.
We'll pick up a conversation this afternoon.
Yeah.